start now, Adventure, or you'll give me a...
Let me introduce you, right?
Okay, yeah, sure.
Or maybe Rocco can do it.
No, if you're letting people in, we'll wait. I just wanted to ask how it goes.
Yeah, okay, so everyone, welcome. Thank you all for joining us for this third round of non-standard philosophy, Laruelle and the Kyoto School. So really, we had a good run for 2 days. We had a lot of attendance, a lot of questions. We'll try to address a lot of that today during the roundtable. And today we have 3 more presenters, then we'll have a big break. Let's see how we do with time, and then have the roundtable at the end. So today I will begin with a presentation by Katerina Kolozova, who is a director of the Institute of Gender Studies in Skopje.
No. That was a long time ago.
Oh, my apologies. I still thought like the affiliation.
No.
Okay, so
even back then it wasn't gender studies. It's Institute of Social Sciences and Humanities. Mm-hmm. I can present myself, okay, to keep things simple. I teach there and run the institute full-time. I also teach at the doctoral studies program at the American University in Skopje, and the critical political studies in Belgrade in Serbia, where I teach political philosophy. That's basically it. I still teach gender studies in some way, and epistemology as I used to in the past. I've published a couple of books. The Cut of the Real, Subjectivity in Post-Structuralist Philosophy with Columbia University Press. That was in 2014. Where I kind of juxtaposed Laruelle to the post-structuralist, especially in feminist philosophy. Maybe that's why you presented me as somebody running the Gender Studies Institute. Then I had with Punctum Books in Brooklyn, New York, I had published a book called Toward Radical Metaphysics of Socialism, Marx and Laruelle, and the latest book, The Holocaust of the Animals. It's on basically what I will be talking about in this paper, in some short version of it, but it's a critique of philosophy of capitalism and of patriarchy through a constellation of thinkers that are Laruelle, of course, Marx, Saussure, Donna Haraway and Liz Irigaray of the feminists, and Zon Rettel and Wittgenstein. So it's a whole bunch of people, but these are mainly the key references there. In that book, I attempt something I called formalism of materiality of formalism, or materialist formalism, extracted from all of the proposals I make there in the book. And I'll be reading basically, as I said, the reshuffled, rescrambled version of that chapter, where I sought to identify consonances with Karatani's thesis and his reading of Marx, which seems very close to what comes out to be the argument here, where all of these thinkers I talked about combined yield certain results, give us a certain new, offer us certain new avenues of thought. So this entire combination establishes an important, significant consonance with what Karatani had to say in his book on Marx, Toward the Center of Possibility. So let me start because I don't have much time. After having presented the notion of the radical diet and so on and so forth, I'm arriving at this attempt to establish a certain materialist formalism. With this audience here, I don't have to explain the main premises or the terminology, as I normally have to elsewhere. So I'll just start presenting the argument around formalism. Okay, so Marx's study, we begin with Marx. Marx's study of the species being of humanity institutes itself as a science that deals with value production and the relation of value to material reality. You can notice here this coincidence resonance with a resonance with the reading of Karatani, who also insists that behind the entire political economic argument, and mainly the economic argument, lies a discussion around the notion of value that could be defined as a question of metaphysical nature. What I propose here is that, that we approach the metaphysical quandaries that move our discussion, generate discussions in a manner that is scientific, and this notion of scientific is basically miming Laruelle's scientific posture of thought. Further on, I establish a similarity between this proposal of Laruelle's and Wittgenstein's notion of Maßstab, but I don't think we'll have the time to reach that point in the presentation. This is obviously, I'm referring here to the value, the study of value production as something that is the core of Marx's analysis, and the relation of value to material reality. So this very question is obviously a metaphysical question. But the suggested approach here is scientific, as I said. Therefore, the science to be established in line with Marx's precept ought to operate with philosophical material, but in a non-philosophical way. Laruelle has furnished a rich conceptual apparatus, at once lexicological and methodological, to make this type of science possible. So the post-philosophical or non-philosophical Marxian approach I suggest here consists in the complete formalization of the question and the language to pursue this science. My argument here is that the formalization we can talk about, considering we are dealing with nature, or we have to tackle the question of physicality, for example, and that implies that empirical basis ought to be somehow considered. That formalism would be more like the one developed within the study of language, for example, structuralism, but of course not exactly that, nor miming it, but in fact find a certain, again, posture, I would say, of thought that could be established a mimesis of, while arriving at something completely else. I hope I'll have the time to present what that else is. So this kind of approach should treat the material at hand. So including the conceptual material originating in philosophy, as material and as matter, if you will, along the vector from the concrete to the abstract. I'm quoting here Saussure, his general course on linguistics, but you might remember this phrase from Marx as well. Even though in him we depart from the abstraction, but in the sense of abandoning the philosophical abstractions, ones that Laruelle would say are founded on the principle of philosophical sufficiency, arrive at the concrete that constitutes them, and then extract an abstract formula out of it. So that's in a different and longer way said in Grundrisse, but this succinct formulation from the concrete to the abstract that we find in Saussure is precisely what Marx stops there in Grundrisse. This was, of course, a digression, side remark while I was talking. Going back to the paper, I'm saying here that we can see not just we do not need to only be aware of this claim of Marx in Grundrisse, but we can see that such a procedure is undertaken in Marx's Capital. So a trajectory of this kind is undertaken in Marx's Capital, in which an exact understanding of the concrete, the description of empirical data, and the explication of its patterns leads to discoveries about the laws that govern the exchange of goods or the market more generally, and ultimately to the abstractions of commodity. So this is the trajectory in Capital. It starts from the very, very boring descriptive details of the concrete. And this discussion, the more formal, the more rigorous, the more it leads to abstractions at the level of formulae that we know of in Marx's texts, not just the MCM or M to M prime formula, but you know the others we find in the more economic ones we find in the third volume of Capital. So the examination and problematization of the relation between the material and the abstract, between use value and exchange value, nonetheless requires the mobilization of philosophical material. The problem of the tautology of value, reproducing value. So I keep kind of re-establishing throughout this analysis the problem of tautology, of value, reproducing value as something that keeps the economic reasoning of capitalism within the same structure of reasoning or economy of reason that is perfectly analogous to that of philosophy as understood by Laruelle, based on the principle of philosophical sufficiency. And this is, if you remember, the problem of and with philosophy as such, as identified by Wittgenstein. The impasse of tautological statements. But unlike what Wittgenstein proposes here with Marx, with Laruelle, with Karatani, coming to aid, we can establish a certain formalism of materialist thought. I would suggest this is what I tried to do here. So, returning to the problem of the tautology of value reproducing value. And if you remember, there is a formula for that in Marx. He argues that we've got this MCM, money, commodity, money formula, which then, when auto-accelerated, because capital accelerates itself constantly by its very own nature, expunges the seed, the commodity, whatever is left of materiality, and stays with the purely tautological formula of M to M prime. So MCM turns to M to M prime. You know this famous quote from Marx. So in a way, referring to this, not in a way, this is basically the argument. Of course, it's far more complex, but I'm invoking this formula simply to remind you of what I'm talking about here. And this is Karatani's argument through and through, throughout his book. That is why Karatani also establishes an analogy, and not only an analogy, but puts forward the proposal to study the problem of value exchange in Marxian terms, by way of using the means of structuralist linguistics and Saussure's study of language. So there is this overlapping between the two texts, or the several texts I discuss here, and Karatani as well. So the problem of the tautology of value reproducing value, the detachment of the automaton of the market from the physical reality of the commodity of whatever mere use is. So this detachment of value producing value and trumping physical reality, which does not necessarily have to mean just biology. It can be also a physical object that is produced through human labor, but it's canceled in its aspect of physicality, and it's rendered relevant to the capitalist economy only in its aspect of surplus value or pure value. I'm sorry, a slight disturbance. Okay, everything is calm now. The kid and the dog appear in the room, but ignore them. Okay, I'll continue. So the problem of the tautology of value reproducing value, the detachment of the automaton of the market from the physical reality, I just explained which one, is a metaphysical question. Obviously. What is value? Pure value versus the physical. That cannot be anything but, a metaphysical question. It can be a philosophical question, but it's never rid of metaphysics. And my proposal here is that, just like science deals with metaphysical questions, basically, the same kind of question, value versus physical reality, could be a purely scientific question of, I don't know, economy of you can frame it, especially in studies of technology and life sciences and so on. There are aspects of this quandary that are necessarily tackled, and what this question moves is science, not philosophy. So my proposal is to radicalize this core. That was the proposal in the book I mentioned, I published in 2015, and kind of try to read the discussion of the principle of philosophical sufficiency and keep the metaphysical core if possible. Anyway, so the proposal is that this kind of a metaphysical question, it should be radicalized, treated as material or real, if you will, or as a real abstraction, as Zon Rettel would say, the Marxian epistemologist. So instead of discounting metaphysics, one could formalize the language of inquiry while abandoning the principle of philosophical circularity and self-sufficiency. Here, I would add a quote from Karatani, again from Towards the Center of Possibility, Marx Towards the Center of Possibility, where he says, in this sense, structuralism is foreclosed into the binary of signifier and signified, or in another sense, culture and nature. So it remains in the domain of metaphysics. Insofar as Marx thought within the binary of use value and value, he remains inside the metaphysics of money. So there is this, comfortable use of the question of metaphysics, and it's not, and it does not again go against the ambition to produce a discourse that would be scientific. In Karatani as well, that's my point here, and I made a similar point, as I said, in that book from 2015 and here as well. So formalization does not necessarily, formalization of the inquiry does not necessarily imply computing. Now I'm talking here about computing because I constantly comparatively discuss in the book artificial and natural languages. So formalization does not necessarily imply computing or a closed automation. Just like structuralism and Marxism, the prospective formal languages of post-philosophy I propose here, relying on the methodological model provided by Laruelle and non-philosophy, allow for poesy while being scientifically rigorous. This is due to the fact that they permit and acknowledge the remainder that escapes signification. And signification, I keep arguing that, is always an automaton in, say, Aristotelian, Lacanian sense, the automaton of signification, of sign making. And this is more or less how, language is studied basically by the Saussure. Except it's, a closed and finite automaton, get infinite. It's very similar to the principle of the finite and the infinite in Turing, by the way, but there is no time to discuss that comparison. So having commenced with the concrete, computer languages, for example, but also Saussure's phonology. But let's stick to computer languages because they are the formal language, one with which we would not dispute as one might dispute the natural a language of, being also a kind of, based on formula, being an automaton itself. Still, that's different from formal. Formal, that can be also, a manifest folk image of reality, what's missing there, even though that kind of language is in the realm of natural languages, is also an automaton. What misses there to make it scientific is precisely the formalization, the kind of an attenuation of the empirical material one discusses in order to extract the translucent abstract and thus arrived at the formal. So, but in computer languages, we begin with that, and so it's more easier to make the argument through them. So, having commenced with the concrete, computer languages go from the abstract, just like in Grundrisse, if you remember, from the abstract to the concrete, but also from the complex to the simple. So it has to be simplified. That is the trajectory, in order to then arrive again at complexity. So this is a form of signification. And this is how languages mainly operate. So it is, or the automata of signification, whether natural languages, whether a value exchange, as discussed by Marx, or artificial languages. This interesting dynamics as discussed by Yuk Hui and his book on recursivity and contingency. So that is why it would be an erroneous fetishization to treat it as a product of mathematics only, even though it's, present there, math is present there, but it's what Turing calls the efficient math, if you remember. So this fetishization of mathematics beyond the efficient math that Turing argues for leads to a strange mystification of the operation. It is perceived as the product of pure rationality. We're opposing to this pure rationalism a materialism of formalism, a materialist formalism, or formalization of materialism, or materialist formalization again. Yeah, I'm repeating myself. Anyway, so juxtaposed to this, we have the phenomenon of pure rationality, and this mystification of the presence of math in computing, as if the presence or materialization of the spirit of pure rationality and pure math at the center of computing. No, computing is a pretty, mechanical and also grounded into matter thing. Not only, in the terms of physical support that enables it, but the process of signification itself begins with something very simple and very mechanical, and then expands to the complexities we spontaneously imagine. Same with language, if you remember Saussure, his discussion of language. So pure rationality, in this sense, is a philosophical fetish par excellence for two reasons. First, a physiologically determined cognitive and physical reality is transformed into a self-sufficient, transcendental quasi-entity, an ontologized agency, the reason, pursuing a goal moved by the causa finalis of its own self-realization in the form of an intelligent and rational universe whereby an equation between what is real and what is true is established. So you can see this reasoning is philosophical in the way problematized by Laruelle. Second, method of inquiry is ontologized. So a simple cognitive algorithm, let's put it that way, is ontologized through the putting at the center of the value of, pure reason or pure rationality. So it is ontologized and transformed into a substance, the reason, the spirit in Hegel, that is superior, a substance that is superior to all substances, and certainly to what is deemed material. Thus, the boundary that separated but also connected theology and philosophy is reestablished and reaffirmed. The reign of pure reason is structurally identical to the reign of the monotheistic God. So computer science, for example, but the other forms of languages, computing, and the other form of languages, and sciences of these languages, including computer sciences, neither reducible to mathematical reason as pure reason, substantivized as pure reason, rendered ousia, nor is the latter reducible to the philosophical understanding of reason as pure and as an eschatological goal. Computer science and the tasks of automated signification are both linked to and determined by also the physical support, in addition to the mechanicity of construing signification. So I have not even arrived at the example of how this formalized materialism looks like, but I presented the main thesis, I think, and I've left only 5 minutes for discussion, right? I'll stop here because if I continue, I'll leave no time for discussion. Or if there are any, if there are no questions, I can simply continue. Whatever works.
Yeah, let's open the floor and see if there are comments or questions. All right, Thomas
Okay.
Buchanan, go ahead.
I can go ahead or somebody else?
There is a person, Thomas.
Okay.
Raise the hand. Thomas, go ahead. Maybe Thomas is unable to unmute. Try now, Thomas.
Hello, can you hear me?
Sure, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the talk. Forgive me, it's really early in the morning for me, so I'm gonna try to give you a question. But so if I understand at least one part of your talk, it's that Marxism broaches these metaphysical questions and therefore needs philosophical material to resolve some of the questions that it poses internally. And so when Karatani gets to those parts of the question, then Laruelle's approach via non-philosophy comes in there. And my question is that you're using a very early text from Karatani, and I wonder if his later work, say in Trans Critique, where he reads Kant via Marx and vice versa, Marx via Kant, if that is maybe an example of a non-philosophical approach, using Kant's philosophical material to try and resolve some of Marxism's problems. And if that's too far outside of the scope of your talk, maybe you could just elaborate the role of Karatani in what you presented today.
The role of Karatani in what I presented today is an added reading of what I developed as a thesis without Karatani. So I'm not presenting here as an expert on Karatani. I'm presenting here as somebody who works with Marx via Laruelle. And I have added to that, as I said, in the latest book, but not previously, some tools, methodological tools from structuralist linguistics as per Saussure. So this is my approach, and I have arrived to the conclusions that I present, including the proposal to radicalize the core, the metaphysical core, at any scientific inquiry. I argue that any scientific inquiry study is moved by a metaphysical quandary. And I have arrived to that through Marx by way of radicalizing Marx's text with the help of Laruelle's method. What I do here now is, by referring to Karatani, is establish some synchronicity, let's put it that way, between the two discussions. So I kind of find corroboration in this text from 2000. That's not old for me, I'm sorry. I'm very old, so for me 2000 is not that old. So yeah, I work with this text only for the purposes of this presentation. I'm not an expert on Karatani, and I wouldn't know what the later work entails. So that would be my answer to you.
So we're almost out of time. Do we have other comments or questions? Or maybe Thomas, if you have anything to add.
There is one question in the chat box, by the way.
Just to add, I didn't mean to imply an age dimension of the question, but thank you. That's helpful.
It's fine. I did it myself. Hiron Theoretic is asking.
Yeah. Hello. I can, say it out loud. Thank you, first of all, for your lecture, which was really impressive as usual. So, what can you say more specifically about the relations between science and the value of producing values? I mean, in a way, how these spheres, values and science reconnect, and what they can probably reconstruct by their connection. Yeah, that's my question.
Well, the science of how value produces value, if considered as a science of how signification is produced, can be and should be treated in a scientific manner. And I suggested that the approach to that would be Saussure's approach to linguistics, Turing's approach to efficient mathematics, or the basis of computing. The resolution kind of Gödel's principles of uncertainty through the formula that treats the Entscheidung problem with the proposal that we deal simply with math that is efficient. That can be computed and that can be built into the universal machine. So these approaches to value production, to signification, even my own study is a study of value production, of value producing value, or I build on Marx's study, let's put it that way, on value reproducing itself, reproducing value. That approach, the approach of seeking to explain how that operates, would be a scientific posture of thought that I said at the beginning is something I borrow from Laruelle. Whereas being inside of this universe of value producing value and value postulating itself as an ersatz real for value production, so for the process of signification, would be the principle of philosophical sufficiency taking place itself. So that is philosophy, and that is what we seek to abandon as a stance, while not abandoning philosophy altogether, but rather treat it as a material of study, as Laruelle proposes. So this would be, I don't know if this was the answer to your question, but this would be the difference to the approach to the phenomenon. There is this reality of value producing value, but how we approach it, what we seek to understand that do with it is the difference between the scientific and the philosophical. We have breached the time, right, Jordanche?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
So
thank you as always.
Thank you, Katerina, for your talk. Thank you all for the questions. I'm sure there are more questions for Katerina, and she'll be participating in the roundtable. So I would recommend we move it for that time, so we can have a more in-depth discussion then.